Hey, ladies and gents, this is Izdawiz coming to you with another episode of Mexocentric, and today we have Ricardo Montalban, the legendary, hey, the legendary Mexican actor. Probably the most famous Mexican actor. He's actually from Mexico and was a Mexican citizen all his life, even though he was very successful in the U.S. And I've also got some studio audience members here. And one who will remain anonymous and will stop yelling woohoo when I say Ricardo Montalban. And, and Miguel, as always. Miguel, no woohoos from you either. All right. I'm thinking that the female member of our studio audience is saying woohoo because Ricardo Montalban was quite the magnificent specimen. He was quite the magnificent specimen. Here he is in his role as Khan. Most of these figures are going to be in his role as Khan because Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, was one of the best Star Trek movies, one of my favorite movies of all time, and his role was just amazing in it. I mean, he had an amazing career that spanned 7 decades, but this was, I think, his finest and most memorable role, especially if you're a Trekkie. So there are many figures of Khan, and there are many figures of Ricardo Montalban. So here are some of my favorites. This one here shows him in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, where he had this special costume made to show off his pecs. Woohoo! Yeah, okay. And they were quite magnificent. I mean, this man was in his 60s, had a full, magnificent head of gray hair, and still had pecs that made some people think he was wearing a prosthetic. But, you know, we're not here to sort of objectify him. We're here to talk about some of his other qualities.
Nice hair.
Besides his
nice accent,
his looks, and his pectoral muscles. Here he is in a Playmates figure, a smaller figure that has quite a good likeness. And again, you can see there the magnificent pecs of Ricardo Montalban in Wrath of Khan. Wrath of Khan was a movie that originally stemmed out of an episode of Star Trek called Space Seed. And this is, when I saw Space Seed, this is what really made Ricardo a legend in my mind. Because in Space Seed, he goes up into space in the 1990s, and he's frozen for hundreds of years, or in hibernation for hundreds of years. He wakes up, he immediately seduces a woman in the crew, causes her to betray the Starship Enterprise. He brings her down the schematics, engineering schematics of the ship, and he looks them over in a couple of hours. He figures out how to take over the ship. And so Khan is one bad dude. He, obviously is a genius. He's an augment, which is, one of those futuristic Mexicans in the future, kind of like Jessica Alba, that has great strength and physical prowess, but is also a genius. So yeah, he takes over the Enterprise in the Space Seed, and he has this climactic fight scene with Kirk. Okay. And that is what this figure portrays, what he was wearing during that climactic fight scene. And this is another one. Now, in my display, okay, of course, Kirk wins the fight in the episode Space Seed, right? Because he's the hero. But we all know that would have never happened in real life, because the first thing that Khan does is grab Kirk's phaser, and he crushes it with his bare hands. He has 5 times the strength of Kirk, and they fight it out. And in this particular scene, I think this comes from Diamond Select Toys. They have sort of Khan leaning back on the console like that, and they have Kirk hitting him with a steel bar that he takes out of engineering. But heck, that's not going to happen in my display. All right, so what I did was I took Khan out, I put Kirk, I laid him down there, and he's on the ground like a ninny. And of course, Khan is standing triumphantly over him, which was what would really happen.
Yeah,
Because of his pecs and because he has 5 times the strength of Kirk. So yeah, in my version of the Space Seed, Khan takes over the ship and triumphs and seduces the girl and flies off. And maybe he lets Kirk live, maybe he doesn't. But he basically gets what he wants. And, oh look, Kirk is kind of trying to kick him in the groin there, which is the only way he can defeat Khan, because he had to hit him with a metal pole. He had to resort to nasty tactics. It was a good fight scene. It was a lot better than the fight scene where Kirk fights Gorn.
Kirk versus Gorn, the best
Yeah.
fight scene of all time.
But anyway, that's my Star Trek mythos. And this is the version of Khan that came with this little diorama. And since I know that Ricardo Montalban early in his career was a Broadway dancer, I'm just going to use that as him dancing and doing the jazz hands.
Oh, that's beautiful.
There's not a lot of articulation there. So isn't that a perfect dancing pose for him?
Elegant.
Yeah. So the other roles that he's not Khan. It's Ricardo Montalban was famous for was the role of Mr. Roarke in Fantasy Island. Did you watch that show?
Yes.
Okay, so Mr. Roarke, I didn't get to watch that show that much, but he was always elegantly attired, and he always had a little guy. Here's another clown to open. He always had this little Herbe Village next to him going, deep bling, deep bling. This is Khan's other outfit in the Space Seed. So he's there with his golden shirt and his sartorial
life vest. He obviously knows that if you ever want to survive
splendor
falling off a ship, you got to bring your life vest and hope you don't suffocate.
All right, and this is my Wrath of Khan plushie, and this is my episode of Space Seed in VHS, modern VHS, and
Wow,
my VHS and Wrath of Khan. I know you guys are jealous. Better than Blu-ray. And the other thing that Ricardo Montalban was famous for, in addition to many TV roles, is that he was a spokesman for Chrysler, especially the Chrysler Cordoba, because he had this magnificent accent, and he would talk about how the Chrysler Cordoba had rich,
and how he lost his hand in a terrible accident.
rich Corinthian leather. 13 years as spokesperson for Chrysler. Yeah, and I'm sure he made a ton of dough of that. And he kept acting way up to the very end. He had fallen off a horse, I think, during a movie and gotten trampled, and his spine was damaged, and eventually that led to paralysis. But even after he was paralyzed, he played the grandpa in Spy Kids, and he had a jet-powered jet-powered wheelchair. So anyway, that's Ricardo Montalban, a magnificent hero, and that's about all I know about Ricardo. Do you have any questions, Miguel, about Ricardo?
How did he lose his arm and then get it reattached?
Well,
really
actually, he did. Actually, Khan, I think, did have some sort of arm deal. Do not mess with the Khan collectibles. All right, it's Havoc here, and I'm also looking forward to a new collectible that they're coming out with, which will be Khan in his captain's chair during the Wrath of Khan. If you want to watch a good Star Trek movie, I recommend Wrath of Khan, the original, the new movie with Benedict Cumberbatch, doesn't hold a candle to the original, in my estimation. Although I think some of the young kids like it. So, anyway, that's IzWiz signing off.